Well, hurricane season has certainly got interesting. An increase in the number of storms forecasted here. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. Joined with me, my weather brother Sean Sublette. Sean, how is it going? And how's the water been?
Tell you what, man, one of the things we've seen that I think has frankly surprised a lot of people in this field, meteorologists, climatologists, oceanographers, the oceans are especially warm so far, late spring, early summer. And that is really changing how the hurricane outlooks have been progressing over the last couple of months. Hey, Joe?
Yeah, exactly. Colorado State University, which is, I like to call the gold standard of hurricane season forecasting, has
Agree?
increased over the past couple of months with its forecast. And we'll show you now the July forecast here, which is 18 named storms, 9 of them or half becoming hurricanes, and then 4 of them becoming major hurricanes, either a category 3, 4, or 5. And you see that's a pretty significant jump from April here. And just to show you where we're at so far, we've had 4 named storms. They've all been tropical storms, though. And that includes Don, which has been floating in the Atlantic as well here. So, Sean, let's get into why this is really happening.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at these water temperature anomalies. This is the water temperatures, and then compare them to normal. These are the actual buoys, or what the numbers are. A lot of these temperatures running mid to upper 80s, 3 or 4 degrees warmer than we typically see so far this time of year. Obviously, tropical water is warm, but this is even warmer than we often see this time of year. Is it will get warmer as we get into August and early September. That's when the water temperatures tend to peak anyway in the annual cycle. But one of the things we caution people, Joe, and I know you echo this, is even though it hasn't been busy yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to get very busy later. Take us through what's already happened, man.
Yes, yeah, and we looked at 2 storms so far that really kind of stick out in our minds here. We have Brett, I should say, excuse me, and Cindy here. Now, they were both fairly weak storms that didn't really cause much death or devastation or damage. They were fairly benign storms, but the difference with these was where they developed here. So they developed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the tropical Atlantic, what we call the main development region. Now, never before in history did we have 2 storms during the month of June develop in this main development region. Usually in June, we're talking about storms that are forming off of cold fronts off the coast of Florida or in the Gulf of Mexico. But rarely are we seeing them develop in these areas of the open Atlantic that typically aren't warm enough to sustain hurricane or at least tropical storm development. Where Brett and Cindy started are more the kind of storms we see in August, September, or October. So that was really unusual here. The storms itself, not unusual in terms of the intensity, but where they developed were. And this was a sign of just how warm the ocean waters were.
Yeah, I think that's the key. That's what kind of caught a lot of people off guard. Not that we had a storm, but where the storm formed, the water's unusually warm that early into the season. And I think that's what really kind of caught a lot of people like, oh, this is kind of early. But the corollary to all this is the El Nino, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about the El Nino a lot. Oftentimes that cuts back on hurricane development. Part of the reason for that in a regular type situation, or like a La Nina, like we had last 3 years, we have very strong winds that are going basically from east to west across the tropics. But the El Nino is kicked back in. What that means is that those stronger winds going from east to west have backed off, now go more from west to east. Not only does that kind of surge the warmest water in the Pacific back toward the coast of South America, but because those winds are from the west across the tropics, it has the tendency to shear apart or tear apart tropical systems. Not all the time, but there's this general trend to kind of see them move in that direction. So what we're going to see here is kind of an experiment, not something we've seen much. A very strong El Nino, but at the same time having very high water temperatures. This is not something we've seen a lot in our entire observational record. Let's talk about the climatology really quick, Joe. And let's pull the graphic up. And this is why we said there's still a lot of time ahead of us.
Yeah, there's a load of time here. And you can see we're not even really on the upswing yet. We're kind of in these like low levels of tropical development here. So yeah, we've seen 4 named storms, but this is not unusual to only have 4 in the middle of July. I mean, once we get to August 1st, yeah, that's when we start to turn it on and it ramps all the way up into about mid-September here. And then we slowly decline as we go into October and November. So we're still, Sean, I mean, I don't know. I'd say we're probably starting the second quarter right now if we were to make a football analogy here.
Yeah, I would say so. So the takeaways from all this, there's nothing really out there right now. We do admittedly have subtropical storm Don there in the North Atlantic. That's just going to whittle away into nothingness into the North Atlantic and only cause issues for shipping traffic. But for real world in the United States, Caribbean, there's nothing out there right now. We do expect the season to pick up as we get into August. Joe, you've probably seen the dreaded GFS that's trying to put some kind of hurricane together here 10 days from now, 7 to 10 days from now. And we always caution those kinds of things 7, 8, 9 days out should be taken with a liberal grain of salt.
Yes.
So there's nothing out there right now, but certainly as we get into August and then through the meat of the season in September and early October with these very high water temperatures, this is really, I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out. There's part of me that's really worried, but we just don't know yet. Frankly, we just don't know yet. We're going to learn a lot about the atmosphere and the oceans and hurricanes, I think, in the next 3 months.
Definitely. And to use another football analogy, it's almost like the unstoppable force versus the immovable object.
Right.
And what's going to win here, because you have an El Nino that's strengthening, again, should be a limiting factor for hurricanes, but we have record warm water temperatures. And Colorado State said, we're hedging upwards just because you have to give, some credence or some favorability towards just how warm the waters are. I mean, even in Atlantic City, where I'm based at, Sean, we had a water temperature of 78 degrees the week of July 10th here. That is well above average. And really, you could almost sustain a hurricane even at 39 degrees north latitude. So, yeah, definitely stay tuned. And we're going to keep you updated here on Hurricane Hunt as we go forward into the rest of the season. So for meteorologist Sean Sublette, I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. You can follow us right above our heads here if you want to give us a follow on your favorite social media platform. We'll be back with you with more tropical updates as we go into hurricane season.